In the vast, untamed plains of the American West, where the scorching sun ruled the land and the wind whispered tales of old, a lone cowboy named Luke lived a solitary life. He had recently poured every cent he had into a sprawling ranch, a piece of earth he could finally call his own. His days were a relentless cycle of hard labor mending endless miles of fences, tending to a growing herd of cattle, and toiling under the open sky. But when night fell and he returned to his simple log cabin, the silence was deafening. The emptiness of the cabin echoed the emptiness in his heart. Luke knew he needed help to manage the ever-increasing demands of the ranch. He told himself it was just about the workload, that he needed a hand to keep things in order. But deep down, in a place he rarely dared to look, he knew what he truly craved was companionship. A voice to break the silence, a presence to share the sunsets with. Luke had heard whispers on the wind about the Apache tribe living in the nearby foothills. The stories that drifted into town spoke of their resilience, their unwavering dignity, and a fierce loyalty that was legendary. There were rumors, too, that sometimes an Apache woman might agree to work for a rancher, helping to manage a household. The idea took root in Luke's mind. After days of wrestling with his own pride and loneliness, he made a decision. He would ride to their camp. He would swallow his hesitation and ask for help, hoping to find someone who could bring a bit of order and life to his quiet, dusty home. The journey to the Apache settlement felt like crossing into another world. As Luke rode into the camp, he was immediately struck by the powerful sense of community. He felt like an outsider, a lone figure intruding upon a proud and ancient people whose roots ran deeper into this land than any fence post he could ever drive. A wise-looking elder, her face a beautiful map of time and experience, approached him. Her eyes held no judgment, only a calm, knowing curiosity. Luke, feeling clumsy and out of place, explained his situation. He spoke of his ranch, the hard work, and his need for help with the cabin. The elder listened patiently, her gaze never leaving his. When he finished, she spoke, her voice soft but firm. She corrected him gently, her words carrying a weight he didn't immediately comprehend. "Apache women do not serve," she said. "They stand beside." Before Luke could fully process the meaning of her statement, she simply nodded and promised, "Someone will be sent to you." Confused but hopeful, Luke thanked her and rode back to his ranch, the elder's cryptic words echoing in his mind. He spent the rest of the day in a state of nervous anticipation, wondering who, if anyone, would arrive. The next morning, just as the first rays of dawn painted the horizon in hues of orange and pink, a sharp knock echoed through his cabin. Luke opened the door and his breath caught in his throat. Standing before him was a young Apache woman. She was tall and poised, with a quiet strength that seemed to radiate from her. Her dark, intelligent eyes were filled with an unwavering certainty that took him by surprise. She introduced herself as Ayanna, then, without a hint of hesitation, she spoke the words that would turn his entire world upside down. "I came to be your wife." Luke was utterly stunned. He stared at her, speechless. A wife? He had asked for a maid, for help around the house, not a life partner. A whirlwind of confusion and panic swept through him. He tried to explain, stumbling over his words, that there had been a terrible misunderstanding. He had only been looking for someone to cook and clean, to manage the household chores. Ayanna listened calmly, her expression unreadable. When he finished his flustered explanation, she simply stated that the elder understood his request perfectly. His true need, she explained, was not for a servant to follow his orders, but for an equal to stand beside him, to help him build a life, not just run a ranch. Luke was completely bewildered. This was not what he had planned. He hesitated, unsure of what to do or say, but Ayanna didn't wait for his permission. With a graceful and decisive movement, she stepped past him and into the cabin, her presence immediately filling the lonely space. Her actions made it perfectly clear she intended to stay. Luke's mind raced, but he found himself unable to send her away. Something in her quiet confidence, in the truth behind her words, held him captive. He had asked for help, and in a way he never expected, help had arrived. In the days that followed, Ayanna didn't ask for instructions or wait to be told what to do. She proved her worth through action, not words. She rose with the sun, her quiet diligence a stark contrast to Luke's solitary routine. She cooked hearty meals that filled the cabin with aromas he hadn't smelled in years. She mended his worn-out clothes with skillful hands, tended to the small vegetable garden he had neglected, and even helped him repair a broken section of fence, her movements efficient and strong. She worked not as a servant, but as a partner. There was a natural balance to her efforts, an intuitive understanding of what needed to be done. She brought an order and a warmth to the ranch that Luke had never been able to achieve on his own. Slowly, almost reluctantly, Luke began to see. He watched her move about the ranch, her spirit as untamed and beautiful as the land itself. He saw the way she cared for the animals, the way she respected the earth, and the way she brought a sense of peace to his chaotic existence. The elder's words began to make sense. Apache women stand beside. Ayanna wasn't working for him. She was working with him. They were building something together. He started to talk to her, first about the ranch, then about his dreams for it. She, in turn, shared stories of her people, their traditions, and their deep connection to the land. The silence in the cabin was replaced by conversation, and for the first time, Luke felt his loneliness begin to recede. One quiet evening they sat on the porch of the cabin, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the vast sky in fiery strokes of red and gold. The silence between them was no longer empty, but comfortable and shared. In that moment of peace, Luke finally admitted the truth he had been denying for so long, both to her and to himself. "I was wrong," he said, his voice quiet. "I told myself I just needed help, a maid. But that was never the whole truth." He looked at her, his eyes full of a newfound understanding. "I was lonely. I needed someone to share this with." Ayanna smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. She reminded him of a simple truth that he had overlooked in his quest to tame the land. Building a ranch, she said, meant nothing if you weren't also building a life. You can own all the land in the world, but without someone to share it with, you're just the keeper of an empty space. Her wisdom was as profound and as simple as the sunset they were watching. The next morning Luke awoke with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. The wind swept across the open plains, but it no longer sounded lonely. It sounded like a promise. He found Ayanna by the corral, her back to the rising sun. He walked over to her and stood beside her, not as a boss, but as an equal. In that moment, he finally and fully accepted the gift she had offered him, not just her help, but her partnership, her hand, her heart. Together they would face whatever lay ahead. They would build this ranch, not as master and servant, but as husband and wife, as two souls united against the vast, beautiful, and challenging expanse of the West. And with that decision, as the sun climbed higher into the endless blue sky, everything changed. Luke's lonely life on a desolate ranch had transformed into the beginning of something far greater than he could have ever imagined. It was the beginning of a family, the beginning of a home. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales from the Old West. We'll see you in the next video.